I'm a second-year bankruptcy attorney at Dan & Gill Israel and Krasnov in Century City. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists here, who are all alumni of Loyola Law School. First, we have Eliza Ganouni of the Ganouni Law Firm. Eliza specializes in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 bankruptcies, but she has extensive experience in all sorts of bankruptcy matters. Next, we have the Honorable Judge Sandra Klein, who is a sitting judge in the Bankruptcy Court of the Central District of California. Prior to her appointment, she worked at the U.S. Department of Justice, and she also has considerable experience in bankruptcy, most particularly identifying and prosecuting criminal conduct in the bankruptcy system and bankruptcy abuse generally. And our last panelist, but not least, is Jolene Tanner. Jolene is an assistant U.S. attorney at the U.S. Attorney's Office Tax Division in LA, where she primarily handles bankruptcy tax litigation in the Central District of California. In addition to that, Jolene also serves as the office's criminal bankruptcy fraud referral coordinator. So we have a good amount of experience here at Mass about bankruptcy fraud. So if any of you have questions about that, feel free to fire away. We'll start the panel. I'll just have some questions for the panelists, and I'll just go through those, and they'll kind of reflect on their experiences and stuff, advice that they might want to give to you all. But if you have any specific questions or any burning desire to ask something, that feel free to write it in the chat. We'll try to reserve some time at the end for questions. But if you have a relevant question relevant to something that we're talking about, we may pause the line of question just to address that. So yeah, feel free to throw your questions in the chat and I'll pick up on them as I see them. Just to start out, I think it would be nice if you all could give a brief introduction about, how you would describe your law practices. So we can go Eliza, Judge Klein, and then Jolene.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for being here today. So I am a solo practitioner. I do have a lawyer who works for me, so I guess maybe I'm not totally solo, but I'm a small boutique bankruptcy practice. And I always think that it's always best to specialize. So even within bankruptcy, we do have areas of specialty and focus. So I primarily do consumer bankruptcy. I do also help businesses settle their debts. So I do Chapter 7 bankruptcy, Chapter 13, and debt settlement. And basically, we help all sorts of people who are in financial distress. So people who have W-2 jobs, people who are self-employed or have a business that, subsequently didn't work out and they need to shut down the business. And basically, also we help people who are in foreclosure. So in the last few months, I've actually filed a few cases where there was a foreclosure sale pending. That meant that if we didn't file the bankruptcy, there was a 99% chance that, our clients would have lost their homes through foreclosure, which is, not fun. So it's nice to be able to help people keep their homes and get rid of their debts and, get a fresh start.
Mo, you want me to take it from here?
Yeah, go ahead, Judge.
Okay, sure. So again, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm a very proud Loyola alum, and it's great to see everybody. I love speaking to Loyola students. So I don't really technically practice law anymore because I am a bankruptcy judge. But what my job entails is ruling on all bankruptcy cases that come before me. And probably the more interesting areas are the separate lawsuits that are filed as part of bankruptcy proceedings, which are called adversary proceedings. And in the adversary proceedings, basically, it's a dispute about money. And bankruptcy can, and I know this is getting into maybe one of the other questions, but I'll just address it real briefly. Bankruptcy touches on so many different areas of the law. It's kind of like this umbrella. And within the bankruptcy umbrella, we see so many different areas of the law, which is one of the reasons why I find it so exciting and so interesting. I have about 2,500 cases assigned to me in the Central District of California, which basically goes from San Luis Obispo at the north right to San Diego County at the south. We are primarily consumer cases. So on my docket of about 2,500 cases, there are about 2,475 that are consumer cases, individuals who are unable to pay what they owe. And then about 25 are business cases. And those can range from small one-person businesses to huge, huge public companies. And I definitely have a range of the business cases as well. So with that, I'll stop talking because otherwise I would monopolize the whole time talking about what type of work I do.
Okay, Jolene.
Thank you. And I am also delighted to be here. I am a proud Loyola alum, and in my practice at the U.S. Attorney's Office Tax Division, I represent the United States on behalf of the IRS in bankruptcy court. So what that means is when somebody owes money to the IRS and they file bankruptcy and they want to dispute their taxes, then I appear in bankruptcy court on behalf of the IRS. The IRS is a creditor in thousands and thousands of cases. I do not appear in all of them. It's only when there is a live dispute over the tax debt that I appear in bankruptcy court. The majority of my practice is in bankruptcy court, though I do handle some straight tax matters in district court and in state court.
Nice. And this next question is something that I think usually shocks students, and it shocked me when I started speaking to bankruptcy attorneys. But why bankruptcy law? How did you end up here? And was that always your intention? We'll keep the order, so Elisa, you can go up first.
So that's an interesting question because I absolutely did not choose bankruptcy. I had, when I graduated law school, I went abroad and did a clerkship actually in Israel for 4 months or so. And then I came back to the US and, I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career and life. And I saw an ad on Craigslist that said no experience required. It didn't say bankruptcy. It just didn't say anything. And I said, well, this sounds like the job for me because I don't really have much experience. So I just started working. I just hit the ground running 2008. I didn't know anything about finance or like the difference between a W-2 and a 1099. I mean, I had gone to law school to avoid math. That's why I went to law school. So it's super ironic that I end up, now with a calculator every day, crunching numbers. But, that was really just, it was meant to be because I love it. And, what I would recommend for, students who are interested in bankruptcy is definitely, take a tax class, take a bankruptcy course, learn about finance because it's so finance heavy and you really have to know a lot of that world. So yeah, I'm very happy that I fell into it. It was a good fall.
And Judge Klein.
And I'm similar to Eliza in terms of I wasn't particularly interested in bankruptcy. I like to say bankruptcy found me. And the way that it found me is my second year at Loyola, I wanted to be a judicial extern. And we'll talk about externships and clerkships in a bit. But I was interested in a judicial externship. And there was a bankruptcy judge who was pretty new at that time, Judge Zerzolo, who had an externship position. So I applied and he hired me. I knew nothing about bankruptcy. I had not taken the bankruptcy class, but I enjoyed my externship. But I still didn't think this is my life's work. I thought it was a great experience. I really enjoyed learning about judicial decision-making up close. But I wasn't convinced this was what I was going to do. And then fast forward, I clerked for a couple of judges. I went into private practice for what I call a quick cup of coffee, which was about 2 years. And then I was very interested in prosecuting criminal cases because my mentor is Professor Laurie Levinson, and she spoke so highly about being at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So I applied to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They didn't have a regular assistant U.S. attorney position because there was a hiring freeze on, but they had a position that focused on bankruptcy fraud crimes. And they interviewed me because I had that bankruptcy externship during my second year at Loyola. I got the job. I stayed at the U.S. Attorney's Office for about 6 or 7 years. I then moved to the U.S. Trustee Program, which is the watchdog over the bankruptcy system. And I eventually led their National Criminal Enforcement Unit. And then there was an opening on the bankruptcy bench, and I applied. And it took me a long time to actually submit the application because, again, I wasn't a bankruptcy lawyer. I hadn't stood up in bankruptcy court and said, I represent a debtor or a creditor, but I had been involved in the bankruptcy process for about 15 years through being a federal prosecutor and at the U.S. Trustee Program. And I applied, and to my astonishment, I was selected to the bankruptcy judgeship. So my story it kind of falls in line with don't ever close any doors. Be open to opportunities because you never know where they're going to lead you. And if you think you're interested in something, pursue it because you never know someone who didn't take bankruptcy in law school and who had an externship just because they wanted a judicial externship, not necessarily a bankruptcy court externship, ended up as a bankruptcy judge.
And finally, Jolene.
Thank you. I did not think I was going to be a bankruptcy lawyer when I started law school. I was interested in other areas of law, and bankruptcy wasn't even on my radar. My second year of law school, the summer between my second and third year, I was on law review and working on the Supreme Court edition, and we were to rank our top 5 cases of interest from the 2011-2012 term. And one of the cases that I ranked as my top 5 was Stern v. Marshall, which turned out to be a seminal bankruptcy jurisdiction case. And I was the only one who put it in my top 5. And so it was assigned to me to write my law review article on this case. I knew nothing of bankruptcy, but as I started reading the case and doing research and interviewing some bankruptcy judges in the Central District for my article, I realized that this was the area of law for me. I found it fascinating. And I secured a bankruptcy externship after that. I did the Loyola Consumer Bankruptcy Clinic, where we helped individuals file Chapter 7 bankruptcy petitions, and then applied for a clerkship for once I completed law school. I clerked for the Honorable Judge Houle in Riverside in the Central District, and then Judge Saltzman, also here in the Central District. And when I was finishing up my second clerkship, there was an opening at the U.S. Attorney's Office. They were looking for a bankruptcy specialist. And I thought, I might be the person for the job. I applied. And after 2 rounds of interviews, I was offered the position. And I've been here ever since. I must say, everything I say is my own personal opinion and not that of the Department of Justice, IRS, or U.S. Attorney's Office.
Nice. Yeah, so I mean, as you can see, to the extent that any of you signed up to attend this program just because, you know, you might have like even a marginal interest in bankruptcy law, you're already a step ahead. And so for my next question, I wanted to know, what is each of your favorite and least favorite things about either your practice or, you know, being a judge, a bankruptcy judge? Eliza.
Okay, so it's hard for me to narrow it down to one favorite thing because, to be honest, there's so many. So one of my favorite parts is helping people and, you know, getting them closure. Bankruptcy court, I think, is a lot different from other courts. It's very efficient. You know, when you file bankruptcy for someone, you see immediate results. There's the automatic stay. So it stops, you know, enforcement of judgments, stops bank levies, wage garnishments, foreclosures. So you get an automatic result, which I think that in the law in general is just not very common. I also really appreciate that it's a court of equity. So judges really take into account a person's circumstances. They really look at the person. What are their intentions? Are they, honest but unfortunate, or are they, intending to defraud people? So I really appreciate all of that about bankruptcy court. And I love the bankruptcy community. I love how we all know each other. We help each other. There's listservs where people will ask people for advice and they'll help each other. And I love how, similar to what Judge Klein mentioned, in bankruptcy, you learn about so many different fields of law, whether you want to or not. You learn about family law, you learn about real estate, you learn about, just a lot of different fields. So you're constantly learning. It's very intellectually challenging. And that's also what I like about it. I also like that it's very amicable in general. It's not like, I know a lot of litigators in state court, it's very, people are very harsh with each other. It's very adversarial. But I feel like in bankruptcy, even if someone is opposing counsel, you can be very cordial with them. And the next day you might be co-counsel. You might refer someone that case, refer them another case or work on a case with them together. I've had that many times. So that's what I really like about it. My least part about bankruptcy, especially as a business owner, is how sensitive it is to the economy. So that's something really important for people to know if they want to go into bankruptcy. You're going into a field where when the economy is bad, you're going to be like flooded to the point that you'll probably have to turn business away. And then when the economy is good or when there's a pandemic, interestingly, business is slow. So it's that's something that people should know if they want to go into especially solo practice, that maybe they should kind of diversify their practice and maybe have something else that's not so economy sensitive. Maybe supplement your practice with, I don't know, estate planning or, tax resolution, something like that. So lots of pros and not so many. I think there's a lot more pros than cons.
Well said.
And I agree 100% with what Eliza said. One thing in terms of the collegiality of the bar, I would have cases where people are just litigating very fiercely for their client. And then I would go down to the cafeteria when we were actually in the courthouse and see them all having a great time sharing lunch together. So it's definitely a collegial group. They get along very well. And that's nice as a judge to see that, because if the parties are constantly at each other's throats, that can get tired really, really quick. Also, Eliza mentioned, but from a court's perspective, for young lawyers, bankruptcy is an amazing area to be in, because sometimes general civil litigation can go on for years and years and years, and you might not have an opportunity to get into court. In bankruptcy cases, there's many different pivot points during a case and certainly during an adversary proceeding. And it's frequent that I'll see lawyers who are fresh off of clerkships in my courtroom arguing their own cases and briefing their own cases. So you get experience really, really quick in bankruptcy court, whereas you might not get that same experience in a general civil litigation. There are exciting cutting edge issues every day. I'll say to my law clerks all the time, can they do that? And we frequently say, I don't know, let's research and see whether it's ever been done before. So it's really fun to be on the forefront of some of these issues that just haven't arisen before, at least someone hasn't written on them before. And then, as Eliza mentioned, and as I did too, there's so many diverse areas of the law that touch on bankruptcy. You absolutely never get bored. It's something new every day. In terms of least favorite part as a judge, the people coming before me are in financial difficulty. And as you can imagine, that sometimes has a tremendous emotional toll on them. And sometimes they haven't been able to talk to anybody about what's going on. So they want to talk in court. And we are a court of equity. And it's really important to me as a judge to make sure all litigants are given an opportunity to be heard. So sometimes this is the only time someone has listened to a litigant. And so they will tell me everything's that's going on. They'll get emotional, and it's emotionally difficult for me too, because I swore to uphold the law. That's when I took this job, I said that's what I would do. And I continue to do that every day. But sometimes there were really, really difficult decisions that I make, and I know what that will mean to a litigant. So in situations like that, what I do is try to use my equitable powers as much as possible. So if the law requires me to lift that automatic stay that Eliza mentioned, what I might do, if it's reasonable, is say, okay, but I'll give you a little bit more time before that order goes into effect, in case they want to appeal it, in case they want to try to resolve the issue with the creditor, or in case there are any other things that they might be able to do.
And Jolene?
And I echo much of what Eliza and Judge Klein said about what they love about bankruptcy. I think one of my favorite parts of bankruptcy, that's also one of the more challenging aspects, is that it's so fast paced. A regular motion is set on 21 days notice, which means, and the opposition is due 14 days before, which means somebody can file a motion, set it for a hearing in 21 days. 7 days after they file it, if you are going to file an opposition, your opposition is due. And then 7 days after the opposition, a reply is due. 7 days after that, you have a hearing. So it's very fast paced. That's regular notice. Sometimes hearings can be set on 3 days notice, 2 days notice, 24-hour notice. And then it's a situation where whatever was on your to-do list that day, you drop everything to work on this emergency hearing, emergency issue. Another thing that I love that Eliza and Judge Klein touched on is that bankruptcy incorporates so many different areas of the law. So my specialty is bankruptcy tax, creditor representation on behalf of the IRS in bankruptcy, but I've worked on so many other substantive areas of law, like contracts, property, family law, entertainment law, union law. I've dealt with issues of royalties, UCC filings, secured transactions and real property. There's so many different areas that you touch when you're a bankruptcy attorney. I also love that there's a small bar and a bankruptcy community, and you see the same players over and over again. Bankruptcy is not as adversarial as other areas of the law, and there's a mix of transaction and litigation. There's a lot of out-of-court negotiations, and also you're frequently in court. Pre-pandemic, when the filings were a little bit higher, I would be in court between 2 and 6 times a day. I remember one particular day I had 3 hearings in 3 different courthouses. Central District of California has 5 bankruptcy courthouses. I had to make it to 3 of them in the same day. So it's exhilarating. And then another aspect I enjoy about bankruptcy law is you get to learn about different businesses. I've had an electricity business, a construction business, a business that did transportation, logistics, shipping packages. I don't know if I said restaurants, individuals who are filing with or without their spouse. Everybody has a different story. You just get to touch on so many different things. No day is the same. Even if it's the same type of motion, you're working on different issues every day.
Yeah. And I would like to add, just touch on a couple of the points that were made by our panelists. As far as the collegiality of the bar, I can definitely attest to that. I've only been practicing a year and some months now, but everyone on this panel I knew before getting them on the panel. Like I've spoken to Elisa multiple times. I know Jolene. I've spoken to Judge Klein before. Like everyone most people in the bankruptcy community know each other, and even myself as a new attorney, like I've already started creating relationships with the people in the bar. And the second thing I wanted to touch on was how quickly you get experience. I was appearing in court within a few months of practice of getting my officially recognized to the bar. You know, that's something that I have not seen in a lot of my other the other attorneys that have graduated in my class with me, and that's something that I've definitely appreciated since I've started to work as a bankruptcy attorney. Moving on to the next question. I'm hoping that each of you could tell me about an interesting case that you've worked on, or if you can't speak about the case, something interesting about your work. Elisa, you want to
Okay, I'll
start?
go ahead. So yeah, there are so many interesting cases over the years. I've been practicing since 2008. So, I mean, it's just thousands of cases. But I'll tell you about a recent one. And the case was not as interesting as how the case came to be. So I have my own practice. And so I got a voicemail one day. I think I got the voicemail around 1:30 or 2, but I was, just on phone calls doing other things. So finally 3 o'clock, I hear the voicemail, like 3:30 maybe. And the person leaves a voicemail. I have a foreclosure sale tomorrow. And I thought to myself, well, it's at the 11th hour. I mean, is this person going to be able to even get me what I need? Is this person does this person have a job? Can they afford to reorganize to save their house? So I just had a lot of questions, and whether I thought mostly this person will not be able to file a bankruptcy to save her house, the kind she wants. So I just called with the intention of, probably letting her down easy. Hey, sorry, it's too late. I can't help. So I call her, and it ends up both her and her husband have good paying jobs. They were working with a non-lawyer. A non-lawyer approached them. Oh, I can help you save your house. I'll help you do a loan mod. They paid this non-lawyer like $16,000. That person didn't help them, and the wife who called me only found out the day before that the foreclosure sale has not been stopped. So I said to her, if you can get me this list of things, I can file your case and stop the sale before tomorrow. So the sale was the next day at 11 a.m. She got me everything I needed, and we filed an emergency case, and we stopped the foreclosure sale. And they had a lot of equity in their property. So this was just like one of those situations where, again, you realize that as a bankruptcy lawyer, you can really, change someone's financial situation a lot. Let's say if they were working, let's say they couldn't find a lawyer, because I only called them at 3:30 or 4. I mean, she wasn't able to find anyone before I called her. So that was like a situation where it's kind of heart stopping. You're like, wow, what if my computer breaks down? Like by the time I need to file the case, will I be able to make it to the court, in time tomorrow morning to file this case and stop the sale? So it's stuff like that that gives you, heart palpitations, but also makes you realize how powerful bankruptcy is. And, we stopped the sale. Now we're working on a loan mod in the bankruptcy court. Most judges, I think at this point, do something called the loan modification portal, where you basically do a loan mod that is supervised by the court. So the lender can't say, oh, I didn't get this document, I didn't get that document, we're denying your loan mod. So it's really wonderful because we stopped the foreclosure sale. Hopefully, I'm hoping we'll get them a modification and they get to keep their house and reorganize on a bunch of other debts. So yeah, that was a very interesting case. And I think now it's a Chapter 13. So in the hearing, we told the Chapter 13 trustee about, our client being basically scammed. And so now the Chapter 13 trustee said, ask for the information for that person. So I think the U.S. trustee will probably investigate the alleged scammer. So yeah, that's just one of many. But I'm sure Judge Klein and Jolene have many similar adventures.
Well, I'm going to actually not talk about a particular case for a number of reasons. One is, as a judge, I am subject to ethical canons, and one of the canons is that judges shall not speak about a pending or impending case before any court. So there was definitely one case that got a lot of press a few years ago but that one is still ongoing. And so I wouldn't be able to speak about it. But I do want to mention two things. One is I clerked for a district court judge, Judge Lourdes Beard, and a Ninth Circuit judge, Judge Arthur Alarcon. And when Judge Alarcon was asked, what's your favorite case? He would say, it's the one I'm working on right now. And the person asking it thought that he was pulling their leg. He thought that he was kidding them. And the judge's response was, no, that's absolutely the truth, because this is the most important case to the litigants who are involved with it. And I really took that to heart, and I really believe that. So I'll tell you one story about a case where it was a very busy day. My hearing started at 8:30 in the morning, and I called a matter, and the litigant was pro se, meaning she was representing herself. And I knew that she wanted to be heard, and she wanted to tell me what was going on. And I also had a packed courtroom with lawyers who were charging $1,000 or $1,500 an hour. And you could see they were giving me what I call snake eyes, which is basically they're looking at me cross-eyed because they know they feel I was wasting their time. They wanted to get in, they wanted to get out, they wanted to go back and continue billing, and they didn't want to continue listening to her. And I knew it was going to take a while. So I said, I know you have more to say. I'd be happy to listen. You can see I have a full courtroom. If you want to wait till the end of the calendar, then we can definitely talk then. So she said yes. So she sat through 3 hours of argument in all sorts of cases, consumer, business, everything you could imagine under the sun. And finally, I was done with everybody else. I recalled her matter, and she told me what had been going on. And she had some really serious difficulties. And a creditor had filed relief from the automatic stay. They were seeking to have the ability to go back to state court and foreclose on her property. And so nobody had really listened to her up until this point. Nobody had heard what had gone on in her life. Nobody had heard about the difficulties that she had encountered. And so I listened. And at the end, I said something similar to what I said to you, which is, I'm really, really sorry about, what has happened in your life. I understand, and I can definitely sympathize. But when I took the bench, I took the oath to uphold the law, and the law requires me to rule in this way. And but I appreciate you coming in here and telling me what has been happening. And she said, thank you, Judge. I very much appreciate you listening to me. You're the first person who has ever done so. And then she left. So she thanked me for ruling against her, right? But it wasn't what the ultimate result was. It was the fact that somebody had actually listened and that she had been heard. So that sticks with me. And anytime when I'm feeling rushed, or when I feel that other people in the courtroom are thinking, oh, can't you hurry this one up? I always give the litigant an opportunity to stay over. We're still on the record, so whatever is said is part of the public record, but it gives them a chance to make sure that they have been able to provide their story, and hopefully they feel like they've been heard.
That's a great story, Judge Klein. Jolene, do you have something for us?
Yes, thank you. That is a beautiful story, Judge Klein. And you reminded me of an experience when I was clerking. And there are a number of litigants who are pro se, who don't have attorneys, and they just want to be heard. And when I was clerking for Judge Hool, he would have a calendar of mostly pro se litigants, and they would all have their opportunity to tell their story. Often this was the only, like Judge Klein said, this was the only place where somebody would listen to them and listen to their story. So I am not allowed to talk about any pending cases, but I will tell you 2 stories. One that I forgot to mention about Stern v. Marshall, the Supreme Court case that started my path to become a bankruptcy attorney. The debtor in that case, Vicki Lynn Marshall, goes by a different name in the public eye that you may all have heard of, Anna Nicole Smith. So this was Anna Nicole Smith's bankruptcy case that went to the Supreme Court 2 times and created major changes in bankruptcy jurisdiction. Another case that I appeared on was my 3rd week on the job as an assistant United States attorney. A fax came in at 6 p.m. and my boss comes running down the hallway. And yes, we still do use a physical fax machine in our office. It's the most secure way to send information. And so we use that. She comes running down the hallway with the fax in her hand. It's notice of an emergency hearing that's going to take place in Santa Ana the next morning on a motion to use cash collateral in a Chapter 11 case. What does that mean? Chapter 11 is the chapter for both individuals and corporations. This particular debtor was a corporation, and they need bankruptcy court permission to use money, to spend any money in this case, if there is any creditor that has a lien or a claim to that money. So in this particular case, the IRS had a lien on all of the debtor's cash. The debtor could not spend any money unless the IRS consented to them spending that money, or the court, over the IRS's objection, authorized spending that money. Like I said, it was my 3rd week on the job, but I had clerked, and this sort of goes into a future question, so I'll save some of it for later, but I knew what this motion was. I had my bankruptcy code and I took it in my hand the next morning down to Santa Ana, and there were 6 attorneys appearing on the other side, and me, a brand new 2 years into practice, 3 weeks into my non-clerkship job, appearing by myself in bankruptcy court. And I prevailed in that hearing. And we ended up working out an agreement with the debtor on the record, but it was a process to get there. And it was so exhilarating, the timing, being there by myself with 6 attorneys on the other side, and having clerked, that's what gave me the confidence to appear in this hearing. So there have been many, many, many other hearings like that on less than 24 hours notice.
What a win that is. Nice job, Jolene. Speaking of clerkships, I want to ask you all, the panelists, I know some of you have already mentioned that you've clerked, but what do you think of clerkships, and would you recommend them, Eliza?
Yeah, so in law school, I did, when I was at Loyola, I did do an externship with the immigration court, which was really awesome. I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot. I helped people, you know, when I think their matters were dismissed. One time I even helped, you know, someone get their, I convinced the judge, or I showed the judge enough evidence so that the judge was convinced to like reopen their case. So that was really cool. So you really, you know, you can make a difference even doing externships. I also did an externship with the Federal Trade Commission. And after law school, I did a clerkship at the Supreme Court of Israel, which was really awesome. So I think if you can do a clerkship or externships, absolutely. I mean, I consider these things, you know, a once in a lifetime opportunity, because, you know, once you start practicing, it's hard to, you know, go and clerk for a judge. Although I do know a lawyer who is going to be doing that. A lawyer who's been practicing for a long time, but it's something you should try to do, you know, when you're fresh out, because it just makes more sense, I think.
And Mo, I externed, as I mentioned, for Judge Cerzullo while I was at Loyola. And then I clerked for Judge Lourdes Baird on the district court, as well as Judge Arthur Alarcon on the Ninth Circuit. And just to make sure that people understand the difference, externships are while you're in law school. Typically, you'll get course credit for an externship. Depending upon the judge, it may be part-time. And I offer part-time externships of 24 hours a week, or during the summer, typically it's full time. And if you have an opportunity in your schedule, I would highly, highly recommend externing, or if you have the opportunity to clerk, which is after you graduate, where you're actually a lawyer and you're actually paid to be working. So it's your first job, typically out of law school, where you're working for a judge. And in both situations, you get an opportunity to see how the judge views evidence. You get an opportunity to see what the judge finds persuasive during argument. You get an opportunity to understand judicial decision making up close. And I've had a number of people say to me, well, I'm not really interested in litigation. I don't think I should extern or clerk. And I disagree, because if you're doing transactional work, you're drafting and working with contracts. But what we end up seeing is people litigating over what the contracts say. So having the experience of actually being in chambers and understanding what the judge is looking at is, I think, invaluable. So I do need to do a shout out. My current extern is with us today, Seth. So Seth, please wave. And after all hearings, I'll sit down with my externs. Now it's sitting down virtually, but normally we sit down in my library and we talk about what they saw, what they had questions on, especially if they worked on a matter. We talk about what they found persuasive and not persuasive. So I think it's a fabulous learning experience. Mo, if I can go off script just for a moment, can we have Seth say a word or two if I'm not putting him too much on the spot?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guest appearance. Go ahead, Seth, if you'd like.
No, it's totally fine. I would totally mirror what she was saying about that. So far, it's been a really awesome experience, and I've been learning a ton and getting great exposure. So, no regrets at all.
There you go. Jolene, would you like to speak about your experience?
Yes, thank you. So in law school, I mentioned I externed with the bankruptcy court for Judge Bluebond, and then did clerkship after law school with Judge Hool, and then a short one with Judge Saltzman. And what I would say about clerking is, if you are interested, it is an amazing experience. You get to see what goes on behind closed doors. You get insight into how a judge thinks, and that is invaluable in practice. My second day on the job at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I had colleagues in their 20th year of practice who would come to me for advice about appearing in bankruptcy court because I had such specialized knowledge. If you are interested in clerking, I would also say be flexible about timing and about geography. If you're willing to move somewhere else for a year or two, apply far and wide. I was flexible in timing. My clerkship started in March after I graduated. So I graduated in May, I took the bar in August, and my clerkship didn't start for 6 months. And I ended up moving to Israel for 6 months and had an amazing experience, and then came back to start my 1.5-year clerkship from March until a 1.5 years later in August. And my second clerkship, I was filling in for somebody. Judge Saltzman's clerk left the clerkship early, and she was looking for somebody to fill in a few-month gap before her new clerk came on board. And so that's how I had the opportunity to clerk for her. So the more flexible you can be, the more opportunities will present themselves. The Central District of California is highly sought after for clerkships because anybody from California, not anybody, most people want to stay in California. And if you've just spent 3 years in law school on the East Coast, you want to get out of the snow and you want to come to Central District of California. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so definitely, as you can see, clerkships and externships are a really, really good experience. You get some really, really key insights into the way judges think, to the way they make decisions. And also it signifies to, potential employers that, you kind of know a thing or two. That said, don't feel discouraged if you haven't had an externship or clerkship yet. There's still space in the bankruptcy world for you. But of course, we advocate that all students that may be interested, take a stab at a clerkship or an externship at some point.
Can I add one more thing, Mo? Sorry
Of course, go ahead.
to go back to this. So having an externship and or a clerkship on your resume, what it says to your future employers is, you know how to research, you know how to write. And those are two very key things that employers are looking for. And so just seeing that line on your resume speaks volumes about your talent and your experience.
And
Absolutely.
Mo,
Go
can I add on to that a couple of things? Just expanding on what Jolene said, be open to clerkships anywhere in the country, because yes, it's highly competitive here. It's Los Angeles, Southern California. North Dakota might not be as competitive, but you think, oh gosh, I don't want to live in North Dakota. But the reality is you can survive anything for a year. And I heard that from a student who got an opportunity in Vermont. She said, no way, never going to Vermont, don't want to go there. Ended up moving there, loved it, fell in love with Vermont, fell in love with a guy, and now lives there and is raising her family there. So be open to opportunities. You never know where they will lead. The other thing, even if you don't get a clerkship, and typically clerkships are hired in the fall, a year in advance. So for starting this fall, most people would have hired last fall. I was delayed this year, so I just hired my clerk for the fall yesterday. And there's always new judges all around the country who are coming on board at all sorts of different times. So don't be discouraged if you don't get a clerkship in the normal cycle. I interviewed with numerous judges, didn't get a clerkship. And then I had already taken the bar and was set to go to a law firm, but a new judge was appointed and I got a clerkship with her. So it doesn't mean if you don't get it right in the normal cycle, you're not going to get it. Just always be looking for opportunities and be open to opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as far as, what you can do in law school to get some relevant experience, and, capitalize on your interest in bankruptcy law, however marginal it may be. I have a question for the panelists as to what courses they would recommend for someone who might be interested in a career in bankruptcy law. Elisa, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start because I didn't take any of those courses.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would have been very helpful if I did, like, I don't know, introduction to bankruptcy. I don't know what courses are offered. Tax law would be great. Any other things that cover, again, like finance or maybe like an advanced real estate class, real property, just so you can learn more about finance and things that you will come across in bankruptcy.
Absolutely.
And I agree with what Elisa said. The only addition would be secured transactions would be very helpful to have. But again, I had nothing, so anything would be more than what I had.
Yeah. And Jolene?
And I agree completely with what Eliza and Judge Klein said. I'll just add a plug for the intro to income taxation. Not only is it helpful in bankruptcy to have basic knowledge about income tax, it's helpful in life. Everybody pays taxes, and so it's helpful to have just a basic understanding of what it is.
Yeah. And now it's time to move on to the more fun, the more social questions. What do you all do for fun outside of your practice when you're not battling in bankruptcy court? Elisa.
Well, when I'm not, billing or, I don't know, responding to motions to dismiss or motions for relief, I really, the bulk of my time is spent with family and friends. Most of my family is here, my siblings, cousins, parents, nieces and nephews. So spend a lot of time with family, try to go to the museum if there's an exhibit, try to go hiking, yoga, do yoga. And yeah, just, try to be outdoors since I'm always sitting.
Absolutely.
And
And
I work out. It's a good way to deal with the stress. And it's also just my time when I get to really focus on things. So before the pandemic, I was a gym rat. I would go to the gym every day. When the gyms closed, I transferred that outside. And I started out the pandemic only being able to run a half a block. Now I'm running about 3.5 miles a day.
Wow.
So anybody can do it. If I can do it, I promise you. And I also was riding on this old Schwinn bike, and I finally got a nice bike. And so I alternate in the mornings really early between running and biking, and really enjoy that. Otherwise, I like gardening, although you probably wouldn't know that from looking at my lawn.
nice. And Jolene.
I really enjoy baking and sharing. So pre-pandemic, I would love to bake, but it's too dangerous to have all those cookies in the house. So then I'd bring them to the office. During the pandemic, I was one of those who picked up baking sourdough bread. I got a starter from a friend, so I didn't have to deal with creating the starter. And up until recently, would bake at least one loaf of bread a week. It's a 2-day process, but it was a lot of fun and delicious. I also love dancing. I do ballroom and Latin dancing, and before the pandemic would go to dance classes taught by instructors on Dancing with the Stars, some of the pros on Dancing with the Stars.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that was a lot of fun. And I've taken some online classes. They transitioned to virtual classes during the pandemic, but I'm hoping to get back into that a little bit more.
Now, I have a question. Jolene, did you ever bake anything pre-pandemic and bring it like to, not to court, like the actual courtroom, but, as like a, like a pre-courtroom sort of snacks sharing sort of thing?
Did not. When I clerked, I would bring baked goods to chambers, but not as a litigant. No, I
Nice.
didn't.
That's cool. And another question I have, so what organizations, outside of like, the offices that you worked in or whatever, like, bar organizations that do you think that students can join or, get into to meet more bankruptcy attorneys, to, kind of get involved in the realm a little bit more?
So I'm very involved in CDCBAA, which is the longest acronym ever. It stands for Central District of California Bankruptcy Attorneys Association. I'm actually on the board. I just joined the board recently. And it's a wonderful organization. They have CLEs pretty much monthly. And once a year, they have the Ninth Circuit review where they go through all the major cases that had happened in the prior year. And they have a listserv where if you have questions, you can ask and people will chime in. So it's really, really wonderful. There's also the Los Angeles Bankruptcy Forum. I think a lot more trustees are maybe part of that, bankruptcy trustees. And then there's NACBA, which is the National Association of Consumer Bankruptcy Attorneys, which is more national. And pre-pandemic, I think a lot of attorneys were more involved in that because they would have conferences and you'd go to the conference, and they were actually going to have a conference in LA right before, it was going to be, I think, March or April of 2020. And then that got canceled. So that was unfortunate. But yeah, there's so many great organizations. I'm sure Judge Klein and Jolene will have more organizations to mention.
I agree with all the ones that were mentioned. There's also the LA County Bar Association has, I think it's a business and bankruptcy section. I might not be saying it exactly correct, but it's you can find it on the LA County Bar Association's website. And all of the ones that Elisa mentioned are really, really good. And they would welcome new attorneys with open arms. There's also a bankruptcy Inn of Court. I think it's called the James King Inn of Court. And that is a monthly meeting where judges, lawyers, law students get together, and they have different tables. They call them something different, but for our purposes, different tables. And each table takes on a particular issue, and they do a presentation to the whole inn. And it's a really great way to meet people and to get to understand the practice.
And I will just add a couple of other organizations, the American Bankruptcy Institute, ABI. And right now during the pandemic, they're having free virtual happy hours every Wednesday. They're either 2 p.m. Pacific or 5 p.m. Pacific. They alternate every week to accommodate people on the East Coast. So you can sign up for that for free. There's also the Orange County Bankruptcy Forum and the Inland Empire Bankruptcy Forum. And the Inland Empire Bankruptcy Forum is having a judges' night in person, at least it's scheduled for in person right now, at the beginning of March. And a lot of these organizations will allow law students to attend for free. And so if you are interested in attending one of these programs and forget the names that we mentioned, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to send you a list again. I'm sure Eliza and Judge Klein would also be happy to do it. There's one other organization, I work, and I forget what the acronym stands for. It's International Women's Insolvency and Restructuring Committee, I think. Thank you. And so they put on programs as well.
Yeah, so those are all great organizations. I also feel obligated to throw some in myself. There's the Beverly Hills Bar Association as well that has a bankruptcy section. I'm the vice president or vice chair rather of the BHBA bankruptcy section, and we are always looking for new attorneys, new law students, whoever, anyone who's interested in bankruptcy to join us for our meetings and kind of think about different issues with us and put on programs, all that. Very, very welcoming with that. And someone already mentioned it, but also the Los Angeles Bankruptcy Forum, which is the organization that kind of put all this together today. And I'm totally aware that for a law student, it can be really, really daunting to just, email an organization with a bunch of attorneys and say, hey, I want to join or I want to be involved. So I get that. So if another thing that you can also do if you want to get to meet and get to know more bankruptcy attorneys is just email actual attorneys. Email me, email Eliza, email Judge Klein. We're all email Jolene. We're all happy to speak to students who are interested, who want to learn a little bit more, who want to have depending on everyone's level of comfort, have coffee, do a Zoom meeting, whatever. Like everyone is very, very friendly. No one will bite your head off, I promise. And so you can always do that. We'll have our contact information. I think we'll send that over to Imani, and then she can distribute that to all of you if you're interested or you want to reach out. Another note that I wanted to speak on is since we spoke so much about clerkships and externships, I just wanted to let you all know that the Los Angeles Bankruptcy Forum is launching its inaugural fellowship this year for students who are externing with a bankruptcy judge in the Central District of California. So the basic elements of the fellowship is the LABF is just looking to basically almost sponsor students who are interested in or who get an externship with a bankruptcy judge. Those externships are typically unpaid, so and it's hard to kind of do that in Los Angeles. Work a job and not get paid anything, and have to kind of find a way to pay rent and living expenses and all that. So the LABF is awarding stipends to students who have externed. We'll send information for that as well to Imani, and she'll distribute that. I think the application link is now live or will soon be live, so you can start applying almost as soon as you get the link information. That's it. Does anyone have any questions for any of the panelists or myself about anything bankruptcy related, anything related to our experience, whatever? feel free to, you can say anything or write something in the chat.
Mo, there's a raised hand.
Oh, there is. I don't see it. Oh, okay. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak, because I'm just having difficulty finding it.
Hello, thank you for your workshop. I'm a LLM candidate and without citizenship. Could you give me some advice to find a job? Because I'm also quite interested in the bankruptcy. And could you just give me some advice?
Advice is finding
Yeah.
a job in the bankruptcy
Yeah,
practice.
sure.
Okay, well, and let's have at it. Elisa, do you want to start? We can just go around real quick.
Maybe start with the Loyola career services, because that's where I post whenever I've had a job opening. All my law clerks and associates have, I've found them through Loyola. So I would say start there. And I'm not sure where else is like the main place to find jobs these days. Indeed, LinkedIn, I'm not sure. Maybe Judge Klein or Jolene would, or Mo, you would maybe know better. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I haven't looked for a job in a long time, but I agree. The Loyola Career Services has numerous jobs listed that can be helpful. You could also look, I know there's a database at Loyola, and I'm not sure what it's called, but it's of all alumni. And you can search the alumni database, and you can reach out to alumni who are doing the type of work you're interested in, and just ask to speak to them for an informational interview, just for 15, 20 minutes, for maybe a Zoom or a cup of coffee if you can get together in person. And you don't ask those people for jobs, but you just ask for advice. How did they get to where they are? If there's anybody who they would recommend you speak with. And that's a way that I suggest to people that they can help network themselves to find out opportunities in the area they're interested in.
And a lot of people find their jobs through word of mouth. So these informational interviews are great. Joining one of these organizations, attending some of the events, it's challenging because a lot of them are virtual, but a lot of organizations are having happy hours beforehand where you can talk to different people and judges. I'll also give a quick plug. Our office does externships every semester, spring, fall, and summer. The application deadline is very, very early. So check the U.S. Attorney's website for the deadlines for each semester, but you could apply tax division, civil division, and criminal division, each except externs for every semester. It's unpaid. One other bankruptcy job, the U.S. Trustee's Office hires from time to time. I know fairly recently they were hiring attorneys. I don't know if they are right now, but a lot of the government jobs are on, is it usajobs.gov. And you can sign up for alerts on there, so you will get alerted of new postings for every federal agency that's hiring attorneys.
And there you go.
I'll just add one more thing. Social media. There's like some groups on Facebook, like LA Attorney Network. I don't know what the other, but there's groups on Facebook that you can join, and you can be like, hey, I'm looking for a job in bankruptcy. I think right now it is a little challenging because bankruptcy is not like super busy right now. So I don't really know off the top of my head of any bankruptcy firms necessarily hiring, but it's always good to just, make a query or post something, or, hey, I'm interested in working in bankruptcy, and maybe someone is hiring.
Yeah, those are all great ideas. And I got my job from the UCLA like job posting board. So I definitely recommend, well, first, definitely speak to your career services office. They have a wealth of experience and they know exactly what to tell you. But also, also look at job boards, like things like Indeed, like it was said before. And if you have the time before you're graduating, I'm not sure. LLM, right? So it's just a year. So I would definitely in that case talk to career services just because they'll get you all set up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. Do we have any other questions before we close up here?
Yeah, I have a quick one.
Go ahead.
I'm curious what it's like being a sole practitioner and how you think that that experience might vary from like doing practicing bankruptcy law at like a big law firm, and just how does like managing your time and all the schedules and everything like that, how does that compare kind of on your own to, you know, a larger firm, that kind of thing?
Should I answer since I'm the?
That's all you.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've never worked at a big firm. Straight out of law school, I just didn't. So it was never interesting to me. So I can just tell you, being a solo, you're basically a business owner. You're a lawyer who also runs a business. So you have to, choose who is going to be your client. When you first start, you have kind of less choices in a way. So sometimes you get caught in cases that you end up, oh, this was not a good case for me to take, but it's just part of learning. So yeah, you have to do everything. You have to do marketing. You have to, do business development. You have to do networking. You have to practice law. You have to bill. So it's a lot of different hats to wear, but eventually you learn to delegate a lot of things, and I do have a lawyer who works for me. She's wonderful. She's also a Loyola alum. And it works. I've been on my own now since 2011. So I guess that's almost 10 years come May. So yeah, it's definitely doable. It's just, I think working at a big firm, the challenges are different. You probably have, minimum billable hours. You don't choose what cases you take when you work for a firm. Even when I started out, I worked for a smaller, kind of consumer bankruptcy firm, and I didn't get to choose which cases became my cases. So that's what's really nice about owning your own firm. You get to say no to people and say, I'm sorry, I can't take your case. Or, if someone's too difficult, or if the case is too complicated, then you say, okay, I'm just 2 lawyers. This is probably a case that requires 10 lawyers. So I'm going to refer this out to a bigger firm. So it's just a lot of delegating and managing, and I'm happy to definitely answer more of your questions. I don't want to take up too much time.
All right. Any other questions? Going once, twice. Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for showing up, for attending. Thank you to our panelists for taking the time to talk to everyone about your experiences and just it's your bankruptcy career. I think that's really, really helpful, and I think that it's something that I wish that I had when I was in law school, and something I think everyone will benefit from. So again, I'll have everyone's contact information sent out through Loyola's Career Services Office through Imani. And yeah, thank you again. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.
Bye,
Thanks for organizing.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.